Don't you remember how good games used to be? Well, this is a good reminder. Hello there, girls and boys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're gonna be analyzing the soundtrack for Dragon Age Origins. And the track in question is Leliana's song, which is part of the soundtrack for this fantastic game. And I gotta tell you, this song totally blew me away when I heard it while playing the game. So I hope you played it as well, and if you haven't, well, please do yourself a favor and play this game. It's a very good game and the soundtrack is fantastic. So if you're ready, let's go! But before we go, if this is your first time on the channel, I welcome you, because in here we analyze the music that we love from the perspective of an active musician and professional music producer, using language that everybody can understand, in a way to expand our knowledge when it comes to music production and songwriting. So if this is your jam, let's roll. So here we go, girls and boys, Leliana's song by Inon Sur. Beautiful, isn't it? Please tell me the name of the singer, because her voice is simply gorgeous. It's angelical. What a fantastic display of control over her vocals. The magnificent use of the air that is part of her voice, sorry. Because the way that she's singing, you can feel that there is a little bit of projection of air. What I mean by that is the thing that is part of her singing. It's so beautiful. It's so, I don't know how to describe it. It sounds simply angelical to me. Also, part of the sound, or part of the reasons why it sounds the way it does, is because it has a very minimalistic approach to processing, because the song itself, from a mixing perspective, is quite simple. The arrangement is very, very humble, at least for that section of the track, because you're not dealing with that big of an instrumentation. So you have this beautiful singer singing in such a beautiful way, and you enhance her vocals, her singing, by applying reverb, which is the effect that you hear that comes after every single one of the notes that she's singing. The effect in question is this, reverb. And as you can see, it creates this kind of backdrop to wherever sound you run through it. And it's basically speaking a tool that we use when mixing music and producing music, for that matter, to recreate the sound of a space through the use of artificial methods. In her case, it's being used not only to give us the impression of she being inside of a particular place singing, it's actually adding a little bit of an ethereal sound to her voice, making it a little bit more larger than life and giving us this dreamlike effect that is so beautiful. Now, it's very important to consider that the setting of the game is basically dark fantasy, but dark fantasy done right. So you can see that the instrumentation in this particular piece, it's very medieval influenced, but you can see that it's also, when it comes to the harmony, without trying to go to the nitty-gritty, you see a little bit of elements from much more modern approaches to songwriting. And you will see more once the song progresses, because there is a section in which you start to see something a bit more modern. But I love how well the composer, Inon Sur, wrote this piece, because if I recall correctly, this happens in a very intimate fashion, on which the singer is playing the role of one of the characters in the game, And if I recall correctly, you discover her singing this song as a player during while camping. Simply speaking, is basically speaking, you as a character are just effing around and you hear her beautiful voice, and you discover that she's singing this track. If I recall correctly, please correct me because it's been ages since I played this game, and this makes me this reminds me of how much we have lost when it comes to video games. Don't you think? What do you think about that? Now, I mentioned it quite a lot. The concept of the setting on which this song takes place, because bear in mind that you are there sitting by the in the middle of the woods. There is a fireplace that you put on, and all of your friends are surrounding you, and you hear her beautiful voice singing. While of course it's in the middle of the night, right? So it gives you that even more personal experience. That's why I think they created this beautiful ambience and this beautiful atmosphere surrounding her vocals. Okay, let's continue listening to this beautiful song, and we're gonna discuss where we can about the mix in the next intervention. Here we go. Simply beautiful, right? This track, it's just amazing. When I played this game for first time, and the scene in which this song takes place, I was just simply mesmerized. As a musician, I couldn't stop loving that particular section. I think that a good chunk of the reason why I like this game that much is because of this track. No, but actually, in all honesty, the soundtrack for this game is quite good because it actually represents many things or represents the entirety of what the concept of the game is. It has this dark vibe because I don't know if you could feel the same way as I do, but the song itself feels sad and depressing to a certain degree. It's beautiful. Melancholic would be a good way to describe it. And a good chunk of the personality of the game comes from that particular feeling, if that makes sense to you. Now, let's take a look at the screen once again because we're going to be giving a brief commentary over the mix itself. In front of us, we got Decibel, which is the tool that we use to analyze music through the use of a visual medium. And in this case, we got in front of us the first analyzer, which is the frequency range analyzer, which, as the name implies, is showing us the different frequencies that are part of the human hearing range, and those starts at 20 hertz all the way up to 20,000 hertz, the highest and the lowest we can hear. And the thing is this mix, it's so minimalistic on its approach that there are not that many bumps in volume on some frequencies. What do we mean by that? You can see here that we got a good representation of the low end, and that's due to the fact that we had this fantastic cello or maybe even a bass kicking in at that particular point at during the second half of the song, adding this robust and kind of how can I put it, dragon-like sound. I don't know if that makes sense to you, because it adds this ominous presence, like it's coming from the darkness, if that makes sense to you, while the beautiful singer is still controlling the entirety of the composition. It's kind of a good trick from a composer's perspective, because while you have a beautiful sound from the voice of the singer, it has a huge contrast with this dark and ominous note that is playing coming from the background, creating a much more interesting texture. Very cool. I love that. Also, this is very, very fun. Well, at least for me, because I'm a nerd. But you can see that we have here our mid range, which is where most of the meat and potatoes of any given track will be found. But this bump, this is very interesting because the track itself is not that, again, it's a very simplistic composition when it comes to the amount of instrumentation. But we got this very interesting bump. That bump is the thing that I was mentioning during the first commentary part of this video, because that part of our human voice, it's actually known as air when it comes to using their gut used in mixing music or producing music, because it's particularly, let me see, it's, yeah, 10K. Usually when you are boosting that band, it's because you're looking to push a little bit more that breathiness, which is the proper word to describe that sound, and it's very musical. It's something that I particularly love in boosting a little bit when working with female vocals. And if I happen to have such a great singer such as this girl, because please, once again, tell me the name of this girl, because damn it, she's such a fantastic singer. Boosting the right amount, which I think is done correctly in this mix, makes the sound of the vocals even more angelical. That's something that is unique to female voices. So well done in this mix. Now, let's take a look at the second section of our analyzer, because this is where we see something called dynamic range, which stands for the difference between the loudness of the quieter part when compared to the loudness of the loudest part. And depending on how loud a signal is, we will feel or understand it in a different fashion. When something is quiet, it's felt to be more intimate, much more closer to you, and a little bit more sexier, but also darker, evil sounding if you wish. But also when you compare it to something that is louder tends to be more energetic, dangerous, happier. You get me, right? So in this piece, we actually have an insane amount of dynamic range. This is the first half of the song, the first time that the first section that we listen to, and you can see that the song begins quite quietly, because it's where the instrumentation, the string instrument that is used to play most of the track, is the driving force behind it. But here's where the singer kicks in, and you can see the entirety of the song is carried by her voice. How do we know that? Because at this stage, it was basically just a lute, if I am correct, playing the string instrument, the musical part, the harmonic part, and her vocals are basically everything that is driving the song forward. And this insane dynamic range is due to the performance of the singer. This particular track, when it comes to singing, has plenty of dynamic control over the singer's voices. Because I don't know if you could tell, but sometimes it feels that she's going a little bit further away, and then she comes back, and then she's closer to you. But it is not because of her control over the microphone while recording. It's partially that, but it's also because she's pushing more air out of her system, creating a much louder sound and adding this sense of emotion. Super well done. This is a masterclass on how to sing properly. And from here onwards, you can see that the first half follows the same trend, but see what happens when we kick the next section. This is when the rest of the instrumentation kicks in, and you can tell that the difference in dynamic range is quite minimal when compared to this section. Why is that? Since we got a much more busier mix, and particularly this is when the cello gets introduced. The cello is playing some sort of drone notes, which is basically the cello playing holding one note, adding this sense of volume, not to be confused with loudness, to the sound of the mix. That's why we see that we don't have that much dynamic range, because it's now the vocals plus the instrumentation playing together. Here is the final point on which the singer pushed the hardest. And also here is where we got the introduction of the choir, which I think is mostly herself singing different parts and creating an amalgamation of sound, making a much more exciting and beautiful performance. Such a great track. Don't you remember how good games used to be? Well, this is a good reminder. So what do you think, girls and boys? This track and this game were fantastic, and the song is beautiful. I think it's the best part of the game, but the game itself is very good. I liked it a lot. To be frank, I prefer Pillars of Eternity, but that's my own opinion. That's a different game that we will. It would be fun to have a. So give it a try and analyze it together as well, because it has a great soundtrack as well. Now, girls and boys, please, as I asked you several times, please remind me the name of the singer for this track, and tell me what you think about Dragon Age Origins, please, because that's the one that I like, and it will be fun to see what you think about it. So, girls and boys, this is taking us to the last step in this journey. So if you like to support this kind of content, the best way to do it is by listening to our music on Apple Music or Spotify, and also by following us on social media such as Instagram and X, because that's the best way for you to get in touch with us in a much more personal basis. Now, girls and boys, as every single time that I meet you, I gotta remind you that you should never let anybody tell you what to dream about, and remember that I'll see you when I see you.